Alright, hello and welcome back to all my bookish besties. Today I'm going to go over very quickly my March reading recap. So it's exactly what it sounds like. I'm just going over all the books and my thoughts of them that I read in March. So let's just go ahead and get straight into it. So I've got my handy dandy journal with me, so I'm actually using it for what it's supposed to be for. So I just wanted to go over some data points that I thought were interesting. So I read 11 books, 6 different genres: contemporary romance, romantasy, thriller, historical fiction, horror or gothic, and paranormal romance. So it'll make a little bit more sense. It was a widespread this month, but it will make a little bit more sense when I kind of start going over the books. So out of the 11 books that I read a total of 2,600 pages. Yeah, I read a lot of, or I listened to a lot of audiobooks this month, actually. I listened to 3. I had 3 physical books this month that I read, and 5 Kindle books that I read. All right, so I'm just gonna go ahead and get into the books. So the first book I read in March was Rock in a Hard Place by Juliana Smith. I rated this one 4 out of 5 stars. This is a contemporary second chance romance with twin boys and kind of Parent Trap-esque. It was a real joy to read, and it was a clean romance, so that means there really was no there was a makeout scene that was very steamy, but there's nothing not even a hint at spiciness. So if you're not into that, this might not be the book for you, but if you are and you're okay with that, and sometimes you prefer that in your contemporary romances, I get it. I get burnt out on spice too, which is why this was a really great palate cleansing book. The second book I read in March was Powerless by Lauren Roberts. I rated this one 4 out of 5 stars. It's a romantasy. Okay, so the main character of Powerless is Peyton, and her love interest is Kai, and they live in a city that has been granted special powers after a pandemic type of situation that left the people who had it with special powers, some of them. So they were called the elites, and the people who had the disease and they did not get a power, they were called ordinaries. And eventually the kingdom starts to shun the ordinaries, but Peyton is an ordinary in disguise. It's kind of Hunger Games-esque. She gets thrown into this game with the other elites, and she is pretending to be a psychic. Off skills she's taught herself. There's tension between her and Kai. Honestly, trying to find where my copy is. There it is. Okay, I found my copy. So it was such a fun book to read. I annotated it throughout. I'm going to be doing finishing annotations later on at some point. It was just so enjoyable, and the world building was so well done. The second book is coming out this summer, I believe, and I cannot wait for it because we were left on such a cliffhanger, and then in my copy I had an extra chapter, the first chapter of the next book, and wow. If you are looking for a great romantasy read, this one is definitely it. I'm sure everybody on TikTok and Instagram, Bookstagram, all of that they're talking about this book, which is why I wanted to read it. It was definitely worth the read, and I recommend it highly. The third book I read in March was Everyone is Watching by Heather Gudenkoff, and I rated this one 3.5 stars. So this one was called, if Big Brother, the TV show, met Clue, the board game situation, and that was really accurate. It's a thriller, but it's not scary thriller. It's not serial killery. It's 5 people who don't realize that they have a connection, and they have to somehow find that connection between them. They are put into a reality TV show that's unlike anything that's been done before. It's 24-hour live feed that anybody can log into. It's not done by a television program. Instead, it's on a live stream, I believe a YouTube channel actually. It is these 5 people in there competing for $10 million. There's the senator, there's the best friend, there's the boyfriend, there's the confidant, and the executive. And so they have to compete for, I can't remember how many weeks it is, I think it's 2 weeks. They're voted off, people stay, but it takes a dark twist, and all 5 of these contestants and the host of the show all have secrets that they do not want to become uncovered, but they are threatened to. It's a really great book. It came out at the end of March. I was granted to be an early reader of this book, so thank you. But it was a really great book and I enjoyed reading it. Honestly, I read the majority of it while I was at the gym. I stayed past the time of like my goal because of this book. The 4th book I read was an audiobook, and it's The Teacher by Frida McFadden, and I rated this one 4 out of 5 stars. So this was an audiobook. I listened to it on Spotify. So if you don't know that little tip, you're a Spotify premium member, you get 10 or 15 hours. I think I get 15. I don't know if that's like the standard hours of free listening to an audiobook of your choice. And then you can purchase additional hours. I think I've purchased 10 additional hours, and it was like $10 or something like that, just so if I want to finish a book, I can finish a book essentially. But I've been on a Frida McFadden kick lately, you will see that. But this one was a recent release, and it's about a high school English teacher, a high school math teacher, the 2 are married, and I think she's a junior student who is kind of being shunned, bullied, and just not very popular by anybody because she accused, in not so many words, a former teacher from the previous year of sexual misconduct and got him fired, and he was like a beloved older teacher. He kind of didn't like do anything. She kind of didn't really like clarify. This English teacher essentially takes advantage of her. He is a male, but his wife is the math teacher, and the math teacher does not like this student. Okay, so the only other Frida McFadden book I'd read at the time of this one was The Inmate, and I will say The Teacher was better than The Inmate in my opinion. Is what it is. It was really good. It was icky. It was so icky. Sometimes that's what you're looking for in a thriller book, and that's acceptable. But man, yeah, the ending of that one, I kind of knew and anticipated it. I don't want to give too much away, but it's a very interesting look at society. Yeah, and there were some big like plot twists at that very last part, so make sure you always read at blogs and crap. All right, the 5th book I read in March was for the boozy book club that I attend here in Greensboro at Pig Pounder Brewery, and it was The Alice Network by Kate Quinn. I rated this one 4 out of 5 stars. Here's my copy. So this is a historical fiction set in Europe, and we are following, I think she's 19 or 20. We're following 20-year-old Charlie as she is looking for her cousin Rose. It's the year 1947, and Rose kind of lost touch with Charlie during World War II. And then we also have flashbacks of World War I think it's 1915, where we are following Eve Gardner, and she is a spy for the British forces, and she is placed in France in this undercover position as a waitress at a very well-known establishment that serves the German authorities in northern France. So Charlie is a college girl, and her brother served in World War II, and he committed suicide, and she is grieving. Her family never really dealt with the grief. She is pretty well off, and she now has a little problem, and that's the original reason for why her mother took her over to Europe to take a Swiss vacation. But she's not sure if she wants that vacation. She finds Eve Gardner, and they start the hunt for Rose. So this was a really good book. I've had it sitting on my shelf for a couple of years, and I hadn't picked it up until book club. So thank you to book club for, kind of inspiring me to pick it up. It was a really good read, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Number 6 of March is Starling House by Alex E. Harrow, and I rated this one 3.5 stars. This was a gothic horror set in Kentucky about a house that has some mythical properties to it and or might be a gateway to hell. I don't even really know how to describe this one. We have our main character, can't remember her name, and then we have the guy who is the warden for the Starling House. The original builder of Starling House was this writer that was kind of like Alice in Wonderland-y themed stuff, where I think her name was Nora. In the story, Nora fell down this hole and kind of met all of these bad beasts. Yeah, it was a really good book. It kind of was slow building, but I think I talked about this in my 24-hour readathon video, possibly, where it felt like everything was the climax and you're like, how is it supposed to get more crazy from here? Oh my god, how is it supposed to get more crazy? And it was a really good book. I'm very glad I had the chance to read it, and thank you to my public library for allowing me to read it on my Kindle. It would be so much better in the fall or like in this spooky season, because in the middle of March it wasn't horribly scary, but I think if I were to have read it in October when it kind of came out, it would have been a little bit like, ooh, So if you're looking to read that book and you want to be like very spooked, I personally would have waited to read it. The 7th book I read in March was Gray After Dark by Noelle W. Ely, and I rated this one 4 out of 5 stars. I also did a book review on this one. I will link it above. And this was such a wonderful book. It was kind of serial killer-y. It's survivalist. She's kidnapped and has to escape in the wilderness. Really great book. There's so many layers to all of the characters. It really felt as if I was reading a nonfiction book in a way, like truly. So that's kind of all I'm gonna say. If you want to learn more about that book and kind of hear more of my thoughts on it, go ahead and check out that review video I did of it. The 8th book I read in March was Never Lie by Frida McFadden, and I rated this one 3.5 out of 5 stars. I read this one or listened to it on audiobook, and thank you again to Spotify, and this book was the reason I purchased extra hours. So it's about a married couple. The woman has recently found out she's pregnant. They're looking to move from Manhattan and have a house to kind of establish themselves as a couple, as a family. And so they go to this house that they're wanting to look at and get snowed in a blizzard. And as they're going, things kind of start to unfold more, and they find out it is the house of a famous psychologist who went missing and or was murdered by her boyfriend. I love what Frida McFadden does with her characters by making them so unreliable and giving them the biggest twist possible in these very fast-paced thrillers. I really have started to enjoy listening to her thrillers over reading them, but because I think I would read them too fast. But this one was such great winter vibes, very creepy, and at one point you went, I think I know, and like you kind of start connecting pieces because Trisha, she's the woman in the marriage, and then she has her husband, I think his name's Josh or something like that. It's a J name. And there's a whole mystery. She starts to kind of find, like hidden rooms. All of this, she starts listening to past sessions with the psychologist that she recorded of her patients. It's such a good one. It was really good. It was not my favorite though. I think I would rank the Frida McFadden books I have read, I would go The Teacher at the top, then The Inmate, and then Never Lie. That's just how my order would personally be. The 9th book I read in March was The Wise by Taryn Fisher, and I rated this one 3 out of 5 stars. So I love a good unreliable narrator, but this one just was a little bit too unreliable for me, and the ending was a bit frustrating because not all of the dots were there for me to connect all the way. I mean, it was very clever. It was a good twist, but I wasn't entirely happy with it. So our main character, our narrator, is Thursday, and her husband or partner visits her every Thursday. She lives in Seattle or Portland. I think she might live in Portland. No, I think she lives in Seattle, and her husband has 2 other wives in Portland. So it's either one or the other, and they're like flip-flopped. But she discovers the name of his 3rd wife, who is a young woman. I believe she's 25, and she's pregnant. And Thursday felt like, you know, the reason for this 3rd wife was because she could no longer have children like originally planned, and his first wife did not want children after years of marriage. It's not legal polygamy, and none of them know about the other. There's lots of twists and turns, and it is a very good book. Just the ending let me down slightly, which was the reason for 3 stars instead of 3.5 or 4. All right, we're coming towards the end, and so the 10th book I read in March was Bride by Ali Hazelwood. I rated this one 4 out of 5 stars. It's back there. Yeah, it's like right there. So our main character is Misery, and she happens to be a vampire. It's kind of like real world-esque, but there are vampires and werewolves and humans. Vampires and werewolves have been fighting for centuries. There's been a lot of bad stuff. But in an attempt to kind of draw a ceasefire between the two, who is a high-up councilman, proposes marriage to the werewolf alpha of the area. And Misery is essentially auctioned off to this guy. The romance ensues. It's a marriage of convenience. It's not opposites attract, but it's forced proximity in a way. I'm sure everybody and their mother has heard about this book. I picked it up. I was not going to choose it for specific reasons. I picked it up for another book club that I'm in, the Currently Overbooked book club that I'm a part of. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, and also if anybody else is like hesitating about reading this book for kind of similar reasons that I was, that are kind of like along spicy lines, it's not a huge deal. And honestly, if you wanted to, you could skip through the spicy parts. It's not a big deal. It's kind of a big point in it, but kind of not. I think I'm explaining that very, very poorly. For the story and for the romance and for kind of like the foreshadowing of a second book within this like world, it was a very good read. And I started reading it, I picked it up a little bit more, and then I like devoured it, which I guess is a trend in my reading habits. The 11th and final book that I read in March was The Foxglove King by Hannah Whitten. I rated this one 4 out of 5 stars, and it was a reread for me, and it held the same rating. So I read this one in my travel vlog. I've read this one before, and I was granted advanced reader copy of the second book in the duology, The Hemlock Queen. And I was trying to like think and be like, okay, so what happened in the last chapters of The Foxglove King? And I drew a blank, and I did not want to go into reviewing a whole duology and not know what I was talking about, or just read like a blog post about it. And I remember I really liked it. So, okay, our main characters are Lore, who is a child of the catacombs. She escaped the catacombs when she was 13, and she's lived in the city of Del Air for the last 11 years, and she has not been able to leave because there's some death power that she can control that will not allow her to leave the city limits. Gabe is a priest, kind of monk situation. He had a close encounter with death, and that is how he was kind of inducted into the Presque Mort, which is like this monk society of people who can also control this death power. And then our third main character is Bastian, and he is the Sun Prince of the sainted king of their country, which starts with an A. He is the golden prince, all of this, and Lore's power of controlling this death stuff is kind of discovered. Gabe is sent to kind of watch over her as she is brought into the nobles, the courtiers, and told to spy on Bastian because his father, the Sainted King, thinks that he is selling them out to their enemy. It's very kind of like Paris, very French undertones, the catacombs, all of this, but then it's also some type of deity system with the like sun god, and then there's the death goddess, and then there's like other ones that I guess don't matter as much. The gods have fallen, they've died, and that is how mortem, that's what it's called. That's what the death magic is, mortem. And so the goddess's rotting body underneath the city in the catacombs is the reason for mortem. I did a horrible job explaining. I read this one originally back September of 2023. It was so good. I couldn't wait to get my hands on it. I have read Hannah Witton's other duology, For the Wolf and then For the Throne. So that's the second one in that duology. Very good. Little Red Riding Hood retelling. Her writing is so beautiful and compelling, and the characters she creates and like the romantic tension and understanding between them is so well done. Honestly, some of my favorite writings. So those are all of the books I read in March. Thank you so much for watching this. If you've read any of these books, go ahead and comment below and tell me what you think or thought of them. And if any of these are on your TBR, let me know if you have moved them up in your list or if you've started reading them. I love to hear your thoughts on all of the book things. If you are looking for more book content from me, I have a Bookstagram page right over here that you can check out. I post kind of sporadically and just about things. I post reviews, I post about things that make me happy, what books I'm currently reading, all kinds of stuff. And if you enjoyed this video, consider giving it a like. And if you're looking for more book videos, reviews, recommendations, vlogs, anything like that, consider subscribing to my channel. I post a new video every Friday. So that's all I've got for y'all today. Thank you to my handy dandy reading journal. Honestly, I use this thing not enough, so I'm trying to use it a little bit more after all the hard work I put into it. But I will see you guys on Friday, and yeah, bye guys.